Most people don't know I have a...
Two pulmonary fibrosis patients living fairly normal lives, following doctors' orders to stay active.
I did have some breathing issues, but I wasn't going to let it stop me. I play golf, kayak, hike.
All right, we got a point.
We share the clinical trials giving them hope.
I joke with my pulmonologist that I'm going to be in the first group where a cure is found.
Plus,
the results of that test blew me away. I had to ask the technician if she had the right person because it just didn't seem like I could have results like that.
Another advanced disease of the lungs and the science bringing fresh hope.
Game changer is an understatement. It was life-changing.
I remember having like tears after tears after tears. And they weren't sad tears, they were happy tears. Because I was seeing CF patients benefiting from a new therapy that changed their lives.
I'm still amazed every day at how much better I feel, how drastically different my life is. I didn't just get a second chance at life, I kind of got a whole new life.
What doctors are studying now to change the future. Welcome to Choices, Hope, and Science. I'm Jessica Lovell, and we are coming to you from the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio. Here at the University of Kansas Health System, we know medicine and research make a difference. It helps patients beat the odds, and it changes the course of their lives. Today, you'll meet patients with new choices and hope treating advanced lung disease. Here's Angie Riccono.
Come here, Juju. They don't believe that you can crawl, but I know you can. Don't let the haters win.
Andrew Sabatino is a young father. He's looking ahead to his life with Megan and Juliet.
She's breaking the fourth wall. Yahoo!
It's an outlook his parents probably never dreamed of. Andrew has cystic fibrosis.
I think about what CF was like when I was first diagnosed back in 1998. I think even in high school, the average life expectancy was somewhere in the 30s.
Cystic fibrosis has a range of severity in different patients. It's a genetic disorder where the lungs and digestive system get clogged with mucus. Andrew was diagnosed when he was young.
I was 3. You can imagine I don't remember a lot of that. I was always kind of sick, growing up, all our baby videos, stuffy nose, you could see.
Life rolled on. Andrew was able to play sports. He called himself CF healthy, not regular healthy. His life included vibrating vests and inhalers. And then came a new medicine that changed everything, Trikafta.
Game changer is an understatement. It was life-changing for a lot of people.
I am so grateful to be a part of the research here at the University of Kansas Hospital.
Patients like special education teacher Sarah Johnson helped pave the way. The University of Kansas Health System was one of 115 sites for the Trikafta clinical trial.
My quality of life was definitely declining pretty quickly. I didn't have much of a social life because I put all of my effort into teaching during the day, and then I would go home and rest at night.
Life for Sarah changed when she began taking Trikafta.
I am now able to have a social life. I can go out at night. I don't get tired easily. I participated in a 5K since then, which is incredible, something I've never done before.
For Sarah, there's life before this scientific breakthrough and life after.
It's just beautiful that these results come from such hard work of the doctors around us. And we know that the researchers really care about us because they wouldn't do it otherwise.
Trikafta achieved FDA approval in October of 2019. Andrew started the medication in January of 2020. Since then, he's had other health challenges, including Crohn's and diabetes. Both are more common in people with CF. Andrew manages it all with medication.
We'll take the bumps as they come and take advantage of all the happy times we have.
Are we playing in the water?
You're too cute.
There's a lot of groundbreaking things happening, and that's just really cool to be able to see.
I'm excited to see all the continuous changes that come, so there's definitely a lot to be hopeful for. And dry.
And we have a full studio today. Andrew Sabatino is here with us alongside pulmonologist and critical care medicine specialist, Dr. Joel Murmis. And we have pulmonologist, Dr. Steve Stites with us. He is the Chief Medical Officer of the University of Kansas Health System. Andrew, fatherhood looks so good on you, by the way, and your daughter is just adorable. Before Trikafta, having a wife and daughter, it was a dream. What's it like living it?
Growing up with CF, my goal was kind of to try to think about it as little as possible. I was always pretty healthy, but I didn't want to not be normal, right? Like having to take medicines at school during lunch and having to do all that stuff. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want other kids to know I had CF. So that kind of left me uneducated on some of the other things of CF, right? It's thought of as a lung disease. But in 2017, I found out that your reproductive system would be affected having CF, which was a total shock to me. So that totally flipped my whole vision of what my family life would be like and how we would have kids. But obviously we found our way, we got there, and it's been just a dream come true. So. Well,
as a kid, you called yourself healthy, but not regular healthy. How would you describe yourself, though, as an adult?
Definitely normal healthy. Yeah, growing up, I would say I'm CF healthy, which, I mean, you don't really know the difference, right? You do all your treatments, you're spending 1 to 2 hours a day. If you're me, and I know a lot of other CFers, it's even more than that with how complicated it can be. But once Trikafta came out and I started using that, like I wouldn't even notice if I'd missed a treatment because I just felt so normal. It was pretty amazing.
Dr. Stites, the first story I did with you was when Trikafta came out. I was just remembering that. This has been called a miracle drug. The University of Kansas Health System was part of the Trikafta clinical trial and enrolled the most patients of test sites. How does it treat cystic fibrosis?
Jess, it's a miracle. And what really happens in cystic fibrosis is the secretions in your lung and other parts of your body are too thick. And you have a hard time coughing them out. Trikafta helps to change the dynamic of how your lung works, and so the secretions are much more normal, and you can clear them out. By being able to clear those out, you can breathe much more effectively, and you don't trap all that infection in your lung. It is a miracle.
Dr. Murmis, is this drug, though, a good fit for every CF patient?
Yeah, that's a good question. Trikafta is the first therapy we have approved that actually treats the underlying cause of CF, which is what makes it such an amazing therapy. All the therapies we had before that were really targeted at treating the manifestations of the disease, the thick mucus, but didn't really treat the underlying issue. The way Trikafta works is it modulates the protein that's dysfunctional or doesn't work that causes CF. And so fortunately, Trikafta is able to work for about 90% of patients with CF. About 10% of patients with CF, they have a defect or a mutation where that protein's not even made. So we can't modulate that protein if they don't have it. So for example, in Andrew's case, his body makes that protein. It's just that protein doesn't quite function like it should. And that's where Trikafta comes in. It binds the protein, makes it work like it should. So fortunately, that approach to treating the disease works for about 90% of people.
So what options are there for those who cannot take it?
Unfortunately, right now for those individuals, we don't have a therapy that's as effective as Trikafta. So that's something that the entire CF research community is really focused on right now, is trying to bring therapies that are as effective as Trikafta to those 10% of individuals who unfortunately don't qualify.
Dr. Stites, when Andrew was diagnosed, the life expectancy of someone with cystic fibrosis was around 30. He has already beat that. What is the life expectancy now for someone like Andrew?
It's a great question, because I'm not sure we entirely know the answer yet, because we don't know all the things that will happen to these folks over a period of years. But let's put it this way. I have a lot of patients in my clinic that we put on Trikafta, and I say to them, you know what you have to do? You have to start planning for retirement. Not disability, retirement. And that indicates a pretty normal life expectancy. And for a child born today with cystic fibrosis who can go on Trikafta, you probably are looking at a pretty normal life expectancy. And when I started in CF in 1993, it was about 17 years old.
So what factors or scientific advancements, though, are extending those lives and making those conversations change?
I think it's what Dr. Murmis talked about, right? It's, when you walk into cystic fibrosis, I've been able to do a lot of work with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and you walk in, at the end of the hallway, you see on the wall a statement, until it's done. And that means it's done for every patient and every defect. So the work we're doing today is we're repairing the protein. Can we make the gene right? And can we do it for everyone until it's done?
Dr. Murmas, Andrew has cystic fibrosis, but he also has Crohn's and diabetes. How are those connected?
CF causes secretions throughout the body to be thicker than they should be. And so that occurs in other organs in addition to the lungs, including the pancreas and in the liver. And in the pancreas, unfortunately, as those thick secretions build up over time, it causes the pancreas over many years to unfortunately fail. The pancreas is the primary organ that secretes insulin in our bodies. And so as most people with CF become adults, they are at high risk of developing pancreatic issues, one of which is developing diabetes because the pancreas is no longer able to secrete insulin normally. And unfortunately, that's what happened in Andrew's case.
Dr. Stites, what other medical advances are happening for patients with CF?
Lots of surveillance to try and watch for things, colon cancer being one that CF patients can get. The second thing, we're trying to get back and address the actual genetic defect, whether we try to repair what's called messenger RNA, which takes the DNA that you have and helps tell your body how to build the protein, and can we get the mRNA to give the right message, even if the DNA is still wrong, or can we actually modify the DNA? So then there's all sorts of therapies aimed at trying to decrease the amount of inflammation that can be caused inside your lung and inside other organs. So there's just an array of work being done to try and bring these good folks closer and closer to what we think of as normal. Because Andrew does a great job. He talked about, I feel like I'm normal. But does he feel normal? We don't really know, because he doesn't really have a normal genome yet. So yeah, there's more to be done, more work to be done.
Well, we want your help answering the top questions that we get about cystic fibrosis. And a common question is about fertility. Andrew, how did you and your wife approach the decision to have children? And are you worried about your daughter having CF?
So we figured out pretty quick that it wasn't going to be biologically how we had children. After some short testing, we figured out that wasn't going to happen. So our options really went to adoption in whatever forms that took. So we looked at other assistive methods to do that, but my wife and I were both Catholic, and it's very important, our faith to us is. So we figured out that IVF, which is one of the most common ways that other families with CF will get pregnant, was not going to be an option for us. So my friend told us about embryo adoption, or snowflake adoption, it's also known. So it's for families who have gone through IVF and have embryos that are frozen, and then for one reason or another, they can no longer use them, but they still have embryos that are frozen that can be, adopted by another family. So that was how we adopted our 10 embryos and how we got our little Juliet. We know she doesn't have CF because they did genetic testing. We had family history, but one of the coolest moments of that was when they were telling us about the different conditions you could have or accept, because you kind of go through and you say, I'd be okay accepting a baby with this or that. One of the things that came up was CF. And they said, would you be okay accepting a baby with CF? And before we could even answer that I had CF, the person we were talking to went on a little tangent about saying and before you say no to CF, my daughter has CF, and it's just such a treatable disease, and there's so much advancements. And she went on this huge, amazing spiel about how much progress has come to be. And we're like, you're never going to believe this, but I have CF. That's why we're doing this. So it was such an amazing small world moment, and it's just been such an amazing journey.
That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Thomas asked Dr. Murmas, is there a certain diet that patients follow?
The CF patients, before they eat any meals, as Andrew knows, you have to take pancreatic enzymes to make sure that you digest the food properly. And then because digestion is impacted, vitamin supplementation is really important for people with CF as well. Taking fat-soluble vitamins to make sure those vitamins aren't impacted because of the pancreatic issues.
Dr. Stites, Alex wants to know, would a lung transplant cure cystic fibrosis?
What it will do is, if you have really destroyed lungs from the cystic fibrosis, a transplant may make you feel a whole lot better and improve your life expectancy. But you have to take medications for the rest of your life to suppress your immune system. So it's really an exchange of one chronic disease for another, and it's truly not a cure for CF, because the rest of your body, it still has CF.
Yeah, it makes sense. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us and just sharing your story. It's just so important for people watching to be able to see someone living well with cystic fibrosis. Dr. Murmas, as always, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Dr. Stites, we want you to stick around as we transition to another advanced disease of the lungs, Pulmonary fibrosis. Like CF, this disease scars a person's lungs over time, causing shortness of breath, fatigue, and weakness. But medical science is providing more choices and hope. The patients you're about to meet are beating the odds, thanks to early detection and advanced treatments. Here's Alexis Del Cid.
Craig Ackerson is an avid golfer.
I try to get in about 2 rounds a week.
Madonna Mergenmeyer loves pickleball.
Most people don't even realize that I have any kind of lung condition. Most of the time, I don't realize it either. Good shot, Marlene.
They are just two people who share more than just an active lifestyle. They're also patients living and thriving with pulmonary fibrosis. Pulmonary fibrosis is a serious lifelong disease where scarring makes it harder for the lungs to work properly. It worsens over time. There is no cure. But advances in medicine have improved quality of life and expectations. Craig was told patients could expect to live 3 to 5 years, but that was 8 years ago.
Most people don't know that I have it. Not that I try to hide it, it's just I really don't show my symptoms much, but I don't go on a 5K run either.
He understands the importance of taking his medications and keeping active.
I wasn't going to let it stop me. I decided not to quit living, just to live. So I kind of pushed myself. I'm extremely active. I play golf, kayak, hike. I stay as healthy as I can stay. So I do push myself a little bit.
Madonna credits her early detection for her good health. Her brother also has PF and needed a transplant. Her doctor encouraged screening.
He kept kind of saying, "You have pulmonary fibrosis in your family?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I want you to go for some x-rays and then we'll go from there." And I really felt like he was overreacting because I had no symptoms.
Both Madonna and Craig have participated in clinical trials where they get access to the latest medication. And there have been rapid advances since they were diagnosed years ago.
I can't say enough good things about Dr. Hamlin and his team. And I have participated in, I think, 3 different clinical trials, which I've been very fortunate to be able to do that.
While the hope is always for a cure, both Madonna and Craig manage their conditions through daily medication and a healthy lifestyle.
Don't be afraid to go on the medication. Stay as active as you can. All right, we got a point. You don't necessarily have to play pickleball, but just stay as active as you can. And just follow your doctor's advice.
I joke with my pulmonologist that I'm going to be in the first group where a cure is found. And so that's my goal, is to just stay as active as I can and get into a drug that is a cure.
We are so happy to have Craig Ackerson and Madonna Mergenmeyer joining our panel of doctors today. Thank you so much for being here. We are also bringing in pulmonologist and critical care medicine specialist, Dr. Mark Hamlin. Craig, you were told that you would live 3 to 5 years, and that was 8 years ago. How did you process that news, and do you think about that now?
I do think about it a little bit, and I think I'm very blessed that I got into some of the clinical trials with Dr. Hamlin, and very pleased with the outcome that I've had so far. And I hope to continue having a good outcome.
Madonna, you love to play pickleball and you do it quite often. Were you this active before your diagnosis, or what's changed?
I do everything I did before. And we have 14 grandchildren, very active with our grandchildren. We travel, play pickleball at least 3 times a week. So I feel like I feel good, and I feel like my life hasn't really changed.
That is a really, really good way to look at it. Dr. Hamlin, why is exercise prescribed to patients with pulmonary fibrosis?
So basically, pulmonary fibrosis is scarring the lung parenchyma, and it's basically impeding the ability of oxygen to get into the bloodstream. But we can condition our muscles to use oxygen more efficiently. And so we often end up prescribing a pulmonary rehab so that we get patients in, exercising, getting those muscles conditioned to use oxygen more efficiently, and it makes a difference in symptoms.
So Dr. Seitz, Madonna was not having any symptoms, but she got tested because of her family history. What are the first signs of pulmonary fibrosis?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the problems is it may not present until it's already kind of gotten a hold in you, because one of the first symptoms are just fatigue, cough, a little bit of shortness of breath, but oftentimes the disease has already, like I said, established itself pretty well before those symptoms present, especially if you're not somebody who is active on a daily basis. If you're more active, you're going to notice some of that shortness of breath early. If you're not as active, you may not notice it for a while, and the disease may have made quite a bit of progress before you start really thinking, I'm more short of breath just getting to the kitchen than I used to be. So it's a kind of it's a mixed bag a little bit.
Dr. Hamlin, is this genetic? What causes it?
It is genetic, but it's really a combination of your environmental exposures and those underlying genes. And there's probably about 150 different gene mutations associated with pulmonary fibrosis. But it really is that blend of lifetime of exposures, those genetics coming together to lead to this progressive scarring process.
Dr. Stites, what is the difference between cystic fibrosis and pulmonary fibrosis?
Yeah, in medicine we like to use the same term so we can confuse people pretty well, but they're very different diseases. So pulmonary fibrosis is more of a scarring process. Now, they both involve scarring, but the etiology of that scarring is very different between pulmonary fibrosis and cystic fibrosis. So don't look at the word fibrosis. Think more about, they are really very different diseases, and it's just our inability to name things appropriately confuses folks.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, we're good at that in
Yes,
medicine.
you are.
Yeah, we're really good.
Dr. Hamlin, how does early treatment, though, impact outcome?
The difference with early detection is that it really can slow down that fibrosis quite a bit, because the drugs we currently have really just slow the progression by about 50%. And for every 10% drop in lung function, we almost see a doubling in the rate of progression of the fibrosis. And so in the early stages of disease, you might be losing 50 to 100 milliliters of lung function per year. As somebody gets more advanced, it might be 400 per year. And so if we can get it to it early, slow it down quite a bit, it can really be like compounding interest and really change that life expectancy quite a bit. And I think both Madonna and Craig are testaments to that.
So are there different types of pulmonary fibrosis, and does the type matter when it comes to treatment?
I think that it does to a certain extent, but it really gets into the genetics. And so we know that there's a lot of different gene mutations, and most of the drugs work on what we call fibroblasts, which are the scar cells, and they prevent those scar cells from either proliferating or even entering in the lungs in the first place. But there are different gene mutations that might supersede even what those fibroblasts do. And so what we found is with our current treatments, they're probably effective for about 70% of people, but there are 10 to 30% of people who may not be responders. So there's definitely this need to develop new therapies.
So Dr. Stites, let's go back. What was treatment like before these latest advancements?
It was tough. Back in the 90s, we started doing some treatment for IPF, and often it was as part of pulmonary hypertension or other diseases. But the disease treatments were limited, like steroids, Imuran, or other drugs to suppress your immune system. The problem is none of those drugs really worked. Every now and then you have the one person who got a little bit of benefit, but for the most part it didn't work. So the life expectancy at 3 to 5 years is more often about 3 years. And it wasn't a good 3 years, right? These patients were really struggling to breathe and coughing and really uncomfortable. I think the work that Dr. Hamlin's done here in research and trying to help educate our patient population develop this niche has been tremendous and has really made a huge difference for our folks.
Dr. Hamlin, the science is changing. What medicine has entered the market?
We've really struggled to develop new treatments, but we're on the precipice of a new FDA-approved therapy that we expect to see approval here in the next couple of months.
Only about 10% of people who are eligible for clinical trials actually participate. Dr. Hamlin, why is that number so low, you think?
I get the same responses from patients, well, I don't want to get placebo. And the way that we've designed these trials is we're giving you what we have available for therapies right now. But with the clinical trial, you at least have a 50% chance that you may get something else that might be more effective. And I think once we do get patients into a study, as Madonna and Craig would attest to, they find that it's actually almost enhanced care, just because we really have a team of research coordinators, physicians, nurse practitioners who are really trying to take care of them and move them along through this process.
Craig and Madonna, your change in medication is the result of a clinical trial. What's your message to someone maybe hesitant to join one? Craig, I'll start with you.
You're not only helping yourself, you're helping people behind you. And that gives you purpose, purpose to your disease. And like Dr. Hamblin said, you're getting really good care. So I would highly recommend people getting into a clinical trial if they can.
Madonna?
The clinical trials they're so well done, and you're followed so closely, and I just can't say enough about Dr. Hamblin and his team. And I also wanted to say too how I feel like Dr. Hamblin saved my brother's life. So anyway, I'm grateful for that.
And we can sense that. We can sense that, Madonna. Dr. Stites, research and clinical trials, as we can tell, certainly make a difference when treating patients. And you have proven that with the Trikafta trial for cystic fibrosis. What do we need to do to increase participation?
Trikafta came about because of great research done through the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, funding major research universities, and then the clinical trials that came about that. And I think that network has been developed for pulmonary fibrosis, and now it's just more work, more time, more trials. We get those same kind of answers.
Well, here are the top questions that we get about pulmonary fibrosis. Derek asked Dr. Stites, does oxygen therapy improve lung function for PF patients?
You know, it doesn't really change your lung function per se. Oxygen doesn't improve the fibrosis or the restriction that's there. What it does, it just makes it easier for you to breathe because you have more oxygen in the atmosphere. But at the end of the day, this is still an underlying restrictive fibrotic process, and oxygen doesn't improve that. It does improve quality of life.
Dr. Hamblin, Lauren wants to know, how do you test for this?
So really the gold standard is CT scan. And chest x-rays can be somewhat insensitive. And that's why so many people weren't getting diagnosed until a little bit later in their disease course. But I think with the advances with cardiac CT scans becoming part of routine care, lung cancer screening CT scans, we're actually capturing some of these patients earlier and before they're symptomatic.
Angela has a question for Madonna and Craig. Does hot or cold weather or high pollen count impact your PF? And Craig, I'll start with you.
I think cold weather affects me the most. Warm weather I do great in. Humidity does not seem to make a difference in how I feel. So I think it's the cold weather that affects me more than anything.
Madonna, what about you?
What does affect me is the air quality. A couple years ago when we had all that smoke that came in from Canada, and I tried to play pickleball and it did not work very well. But anyway, I really pay attention to the air quality now before I do anything with exertion outside.
Well, we would like to thank all of our guests and doctors for joining us today and sharing your stories of hope. And if you have enjoyed our program, Choices, Hope, and Science, I invite you to join the conversation every morning at 8 a.m. on Facebook and on YouTube as we live stream patient stories along with the specialists making a difference. Join me for the Morning Medical Update.
The University of Kansas Health System's pulmonary care team provides advanced care for a complete range of respiratory conditions. From general pulmonary symptoms to complex respiratory illnesses, our specialists, advanced practice providers, and nurses deliver the high-quality care you and your loved ones expect and trust. To connect with our specialized team, call 913-588-1227. And remember, every breath counts.